Welcome to Ancient Geeks, a podcast from a couple of geeks of a certain age. We look at the development of geek culture through the lenses of our youth and is informed by decades of geekery. We were geek before it was chic, and it would appear that it is now clobbering time. I am your co-host, Stephen Taylor.
And I'm your co-host, Tom Yancey Street Grant.
Today on Ancient Geeks, we're talking John Byrne's classic run of the Fantastic Four in anticipation of the upcoming new movie. How are you today, Tom?
I am doing fabulous. How about you?
Fantastic. I am quite well, thank you. So, before we dive into the burn of it all, what's going on for you this week in geekery?
Well, since we did the Superman special episode, I've been reading a lot of the first Superman comics by Siegel and Schuster, which have been really great. But I've also rediscovered Xena Warrior Princess. And it's the perfect show when you're doing something like helping out with some matters on the Outside the Beltway blog, to have on, that it doesn't require a lot of brain cycles to do either. So
yes,
it fills up my tiny brain to do both at the same time. But those are fun shows. Those are really fun shows.
I never watched any of them, so maybe who knows someday.
I mean, they're all tongue in cheek and campy and so forth, but they're really fun.
So I'll do two things, both pretty quick. One is because of Superman, I've been listening. In fact, this morning I was listening to the soundtrack for the Superman movie is on Spotify. It's actually quite good, and it's a very enjoyable listen. And then the other thing that I've started, I'm only 2 episodes in, but I'm already kind of hooked. But it's something I cannot do while sorting image problems on OTB, which is the Eternaut or El Eternata on Netflix. Are you familiar with this?
Oh yeah, I really want to see that.
I've watched the first 2 episodes and I'm hooked. I'm really into it. I'm looking forward to finishing. It's only 6 episodes, I guess, and it fits the ancient geek theme quite well because it is based on a 1950s comic book. Apparently, it's a classic in Argentina. Anyhow, I highly recommend it, but it does require concentration. I speak Spanish, but the Argentines are hard for me to understand, and quite frankly, my Spanish has degraded some over the last, oddly enough, 30 years when I use it.
Is it the accent or the idioms or what's different about Argentines?
The way the Argentines clip their language, they clip the words. So it's and the ends of words are really important in Spanish. And it's partially the accent and partially the way they pronounce the things. And it's my bias toward Colombian Spanish, but Colombian Spanish is a little more pure in that sense. Although I'm sure the Spaniards would say that's not true, but that's a different problem entirely. At any rate, I would highly recommend The Eternaut on Netflix.
Well, that raises the unanswerable question of who has the best Spanish? Which country has the best Spanish? But we're not going to throw that bomb out there into the Spanish-speaking world.
It is a debate, and it's probably something that could get you into a fist fight depending on where you're at when you say it.
Okay.
Anyhow. So, what theme music would you suggest for this week's episode?
So I went back and I listened to the 60s cartoon music, and we talked about that already, so I thought that was a cheat. So I chose the 90s music, which has sort of like an interesting blend of sort of this disco, over-the-top kind of theme that's very 90s or 80s cartoon-like, but also like little elements of the Star Trek Enterprise theme as well. So it is a bitter stew of music.
I did the same thing. I went back and I looked at the 70s cartoon and the 60s cartoon. Is there one with lyrics for the 60s? I couldn't find one.
I don't think so.
So yeah, I was very disappointed because if Doc Banner can get pelted with gamma rays, I figured there had to be a cosmic ray lyric out there, but no go. I did not look at the 90s because I never saw the comic. So my sideways suggestion is I found on Spotify the John Byrne Band, which is mostly Irish folk music, and I'll go with the song Sing On Johnny to encourage Byrne to finish his Elsewhere X-Men comics.
Oh, there we go.
Stopped doing over a decade ago. But I got nothing beyond that. I also even listened to some of the new Fantastic Four soundtrack, but it didn't grab me enough to suggest. Okay. Anyhow, so, that's there we are. There's our music. So what? Let's talk about these comics. So we did mention, and I can't remember what episode I should have looked. One of our early episodes of the podcast run was about our early Marvel Comics faves. We talked some about the
Hmm.
Fantastic Four,
Yeah.
and I know that I said some things about the Byrne run, and we talked about John Byrne's X-Men a couple of episodes ago. But so now here we are with a rather lengthy run actually on the comic that
Yeah.
that started in the early '80s and then continued on for quite a while. So I guess I'll start and ask why was this run to you? How did you? Well, I'll ask how you encountered it, I guess, and then ask. This was a kind of an instant and obvious deviation and improvement, right, from
Yeah.
where the book had been. So, what was your encounter like, and what were your impressions early on about the comic?
Well, so my encounter was because of college, had stopped reading comics for a little while, and I came back in the middle of the Byrne run. And one of the reasons I hadn't been reading Fantastic Four was that it really got stale. Uh, so after the Lee Kirby period, there were other people writing and illustrating. I really like John Buscema as a Fantastic Four artist. I think Roy Thomas wrote Fantastic Four for a while, but anyway, it just got to be really tired, and that they weren't on my radar at all. Some of the things that Fantastic Four had been doing were just really execrable. I mean, I think the lowest point was Guard, the villain who was a cosmic hockey player.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yes, it just got goofy. It got sort
Yeah,
of a
yeah,
Silver Age goofy, but not in the most charming way. And they had dumb
yeah.
villains like the Brute and Sphinx. I wasn't a big fan of Archon.
Mm.
Is in a lot of what in comics keeps the life essence going are the villains.
Good.
And when I started reading again, it really stood out to me. Okay, well, here's John Byrne, someone I really like. I knew him from the X-Men, and it was really good. Very, very improved over the retread after retread after retread of
Hmm.
here's another Doctor Doom story. Here's the Molecule Man done in a very uninteresting way, sort of pap that Marvel was putting out in Fantastic Four for way too long. How about you?
So again, it's hard to always remember exactly what the first issue I bought new was, but I was a little younger. I'm in high school at this point, maybe actually middle school at the beginning of all of this
Hmm.
actually, and was still trying to find my way into what comic collecting was like. I'm pretty sure that the first one I got was somewhere around 240. I know by the time, which was an Inhuman story, and I remember buying pretty soon thereafter a bunch of back issues, including all the Frankie Ray stuff and
Right.
the Doctor Doom, the 20th anniversary episode issue, 236, and then eventually filling in the whole gap. Um, and I had read some Fantastic Four previous. I had not read very much of the Lee Kirby stuff because at that point it was out of reach in terms of either my capacity to purchase it or it being published in some way that was accessible to a 13-year-old. And I had read, which I had mentioned before. Here's an ongoing recent theme. I will disagree. I like the Sphinx issues. I'm going to do the same thing you did a couple podcasts ago. There was a run there with Nova and the Xandar and Galactus and the Sphinx that I actually quite liked. In fact, Byrne did some of the art on that at the time. I think a lot of them were written by Marv Wolfman. They were decent stories, but on balance, I agree. There was a bunch of kind of silliness, mundanity. The cosmic's not quite the right word, but when you look back at the Lee Kirby run, which I have been able to partake of since my youth, there's this sort of grandiosity to the Fantastic Four. There is a kind of
Right.
cosmic element to it, uh, and also kind of I don't know, just an importance to the stories that did kind of seep out of it a lot in the 1970s, and I think Byrne helped restore a lot of that.
Yes.
I also just felt like the sort of the general sort of the power level of the team, like a lot of comics in the 70s, kind of it seemed to not make sense. Byrne kind of reinvigorates that, I think. And also, and I think we'll talk about this in a minute, but the I liked some of the episodic way he dealt with some of these comics, but also the sort of the sci-fi of it all seemed a bit more
Right.
prominent than had been the case in
Yeah.
some of the previous episodes,
Well,
issues.
I also thought that, and forgive me if I jump ahead a little bit here, but
No, no,
there's
jump
sort
right
of the
on.
natural life cycle of comics, which we've talked about, which is a publisher puts out an issue every month.
Yes,
And there are times when you get somebody new working on the comic and they breathe new life into it. And they do an interesting set of issues. Sometimes it's the writer, sometimes it's the artist, sometimes the writer and the artist together really stand out. But you get those issues that you really want to read that become classics, and then those kind of peter out.
right.
And I thought one of the reasons why it had petered out for the Fantastic Four, uh, my low opinion of the Sphinx notwithstanding, was that I didn't think they handled the human side of
I
things.
agree.
And you were talking about, power level and science fiction and so forth. But the great thing about the Fantastic Four was the family aspect.
Yes, I agree.
And so as you were rotating through the plot, part of it would swing around that would be Ben continuing to rue the fact that he was stuck being the thing, or something with Sue and Reed and their
Right.
marriage, or something, right? And then they would swing back around to the cosmic science fiction-ish sorts of challenges that they had, though even some of the lesser ones were still pretty interesting.
Right.
Yeah, in fact, like when John Byrne brought back the Hate Monger, I thought that was
Hmm.
actually pretty good. It was clear when I picked up the Fantastic Four again that it had done that sort of it had hit that new crest in quality. And you kind of know if you read comics long enough, or if you watch episodic television or whatever, that doesn't last forever, but it was going a pretty good long time.
Yes, that's right. Oh, speaking of time, right, it did strike me that the episode, I keep doing it now, issue 236 was the 20th anniversary, which seemed at my young age, wow, it's a long time,
Oh, I
which of course
know.
that's 44 years ago now, but that's all right. Um, but so yeah, let's talk about the characters because I think the
Yeah.
characters are central to Burns' run, and I think let's talk about the core four, and we can just kind of go down the list. I guess we can start with Reed.
Yeah.
I think one of the things I'll start with this, and then I'll be curious what you have to say. I mean, I think that one of the things that Byrne does well is highlight the fact that he's not the only one that does this. So I don't want to give too much credit, but he accentuates it quite well. That Reed's main superpower is his genius, not his stretchy powers.
Right.
And
Right.
also, in some ways, it's his weakness, his genius, right? Because he's
Yes.
so interested in doing the things he can do that he makes some, dubious choices at times.
Oh, yeah. Well, he even gets so distracted with something that he'll put himself or others into physical peril.
Exactly.
I just remember
Exactly.
like that one where they're in the negative zone and he
Yes.
should be paying attention to the fact that he's running out of time and about to be dragged into whatever that's called, the zone of annihilation.
Yes.
Like, oh my God, I was a little too fascinated with this problem I was engaged in.
Yes. Yes. So, anything else about Reed that you want to comment on?
Yeah, I mean, Reed's an interesting character, and I think that in other sets of issues of Fantastic Four, writers did as good a job or worse of a job. I can't
Hmm.
think of anybody who did a better job with Reed
No, I think
than
that's
Byrne.
fair. I think a lot of the 70s they would occasionally make Reed they would go too far and make him a jerk
Yeah,
in a way that didn't quite work for me. I mean, the idea that he is distractible by his science, that his genius is such that he gets lost in his own mind about all these projects and kind of ignores, the sort of birthdays or whatever's going on. But I also think Byrne did a good job of really pointing out that he did care about his family. He was a family man.
right.
He loved his wife. He loved his son. And he cared about Ben. It wasn't just a science experiment. These are all things I think that are well highlighted in this run of the book.
Yeah. I mean, the other thing I would say about Reed is he's a very compassionate person.
Yes.
And that goes all the way back to the early Fantastic Four issues done by Kirby and Lee. That, for example, he was really dedicated to helping his friend if he could not be a rock monster.
Hmm. Hmm.
And you see this all the time, especially in the Galactus issues, which we'll talk about.
Yeah. Well, actually, I have Sue listed second, but I'm gonna let's do Ben right quick because I think that
Okay.
his because of what you just said, right? So there is this, especially early on, there is this again, yet again, an attempt to cure Ben of his rockness,
Yes.
which is an ongoing theme in the comic going back to the early days of Lee and Kirby. And the experiment goes awry, right? And he
Yes.
reverts back to a more lumpy version of himself.
Yeah, as
Uh,
drawn by Kirby in the first
yeah,
issues.
yeah, which was pretty cool, actually. I
Hmm.
kind of liked
I
that
like that.
presentation.
Yeah.
Um, but it's all cast as a psychological aspect of Ben's character, right? Because it really
Yeah.
is. Reed decides that Ben doesn't really want to go back to being a human because he's afraid that Alicia won't love him anymore, that
Right.
she's in love with the thing and not Ben. Which they
Yeah,
kind of
Alicia's his blind girlfriend, for
yeah.
those of you who are not big
Alicia Masters
Fantastic
is his
Four fans.
blind girlfriend, sculptor and stepdaughter of the puppet master.
Yeah.
If we're going to get into all the gory details. They kind of messed that part up later, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But we'll get to that in a minute. But I like the idea that sort of Reed's sort of puzzling out this problem, kind of can recognize that it's not just a science equation, that it's the
Right.
human element matters in all this.
Hmm.
And also, I like the way Byrne wrote him and Ben at this point, right? So then Ben almost becomes more jovial when he thinks he
Yes.
can't be cured, which is sort of an interesting element of the character.
Right.
I've always liked the Thing. He's one of my favorite characters actually in the Marvel universe, and the
Oh,
way
me
Byrne
too.
writes him is, I think, the top of the heap.
Yeah, that he kind of comes to accept the fact that he's going to be the thing. Those that particular set of issues I thought were standout.
Yes.
Just in general. I mean, talk about compassion. He's also, a deep feeling sort of person in a lot of ways.
Yes.
Not just
Yes.
morose. Oh, well, I'm a big orange rock monster, but a really caring person in his own right.
Yeah, I think they did a good job of, or Byrne did a good job of capturing the humanity of the character, not making him necessarily just a grumpy guy who talks about clobbering people and the Yancey Street
Right.
Gang. It almost becomes a caricature at some point in the 70s.
Yeah, one scene that really stood out for me was a little sort of throwaway thing, but like he's on the street and he bumps into some woman and she says, "Oh, you're the Thing," and clearly he would have preferred to be called Ben Grimm. Nice
Right,
to meet you, Ben Grimm, not
right,
the Thing.
right.
But it's like, okay, I get it. This is the knee-jerk reaction of people who know me from looking at the newspaper
That's
or
right.
TV news or whatever. So
That's
yeah.
right. Um,
Yeah, and which you don't always get that with a lot of characters in there, let's say, who are not stuck in a particular form and they don't have a secret identity. But sometimes you have people who are comic book characters. Their secret identity, the other part of themselves, the non-superhero part,
mhm.
isn't interesting at all.
Right, 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 right. That's true. Well, the comp that comes to mind as you're describing that is it's almost like in some cases an actor who is known for a role who would like to be known for themselves and not for the role that
Right.
they play.
Oh, good point. Good point. Yeah.
Um, I also liked the interaction between Johnny, and Ben. It was
Yeah.
a sibling kind of thing that I mean, again, having three boys, all the dumb interactions and goofy things they do to one another, even now, it rings a little more truth. And maybe at times
Yeah.
I thought it was a little juvenile when I read the comic, or maybe over the top. It works. I've referenced before, I think, but it's worth pointing. There's a great issue of Marvel Fanfare with a John Byrne drawn story where it's all just Johnny playing practical jokes on the Thing.
Yeah. That's really
That
great.
I think captures that really well.
Yeah, shout out to Marvel Fanfare. They had some really great issues.
They really did. They really, really did. Um, so so let's talk Johnny because I'm
Okay.
because that's why I just mentioned him. So what about his characterization of Johnny Storm, the Human Torch?
Good. I thought he was not a ridiculous kind of out of control teenager
Right,
the way that he was originally in the
right.
comics. He had that jovial back and forth with Ben, but it really was jovial.
Hmm.
You saw him trying to differentiate himself from his
Yes,
family, uh,
yes.
to use the psychological term, by getting an apartment for
Right,
himself.
right.
He got a girlfriend whom he lost, and I thought that was really well handled.
It was really well
He
handled, yeah.
seemed better fleshed out than most other times I'd ever seen Johnny Storm in the comics.
I agree with that. Or in movies to date.
Oh,
So
yes.
hopefully, but yeah, I think that I mean all of these characters clearly look. Reed being a reclusive genius, Ben being a tortured rock monster, Johnny being the younger teen slash early 20s trying to
Right.
find his identity themes have all run through the comic from the beginning. But I think that Byrne made them less, what's the right word I want? I think a lot of writers take those things as just sort of like window dressing and don't take them seriously. I think
Right.
Byrne did a good job of making them really part of these characters, right?
Hmm. I
In ways
agree.
that had not happened previous. And all the Johnny's lovelorn stuff gets a little soapy at times, but still it makes sense
Yeah.
in context. So I put Sue second, but Sue Storm Richards, the Invisible Girl slash Invisible Woman. What are your thoughts on Byrne's treatment of that character?
I thought it was okay.
Hmm.
I thought that was probably, if I'm gonna, kind of rank how well John Byrne handled the characters, I kind of would have put her at the bottom. I mean, it seemed clear that he was aware that, okay, she needed to be not the invisible girl, be the invisible woman, and not just in the name, but in having a stronger personality, a stronger part in the Fantastic Four. You see her discover new ways to use her powers, but as a person, meh, I don't know. I mean, what do you think?
So I would actually rank her. Actually, I thought his treatment of her was better than treatment of Johnny, which was still a little more um, continuity. I mean, I think that like a lot of white dudes, especially of the era, his writing of women was not as good as his writing of men.
Yeah,
He did a better job with Heather McDonald in Alpha Flight, in my opinion, than he did with maybe any other character that he wrote.
yeah,
But I thought that, well, part of everything's comparative, right, or relative. I think compared to Sue Storm Richards' previous incarnations, this is light years better than anything we'd seen on the
oh yeah,
page.
yeah. But
Um,
that's not a high bar.
that's fair. And I agree with you. He explores her powers in ways that I think are very interesting. And actually, in some ways, illustrates she may be the most powerful member of the Fantastic Four.
Yes,
I think that especially later, when Reed gets kidnapped, she takes a leadership role in a way that she really never had previously done.
right.
I think that the stuff with Malice was in some ways a little ham-fisted, but also explored some issues from that's when the hate monger takes over Sue. That's partially where she learns that she really deploys her powers against the other members of the FF, but they think she's a villain, ends up being her. But the hate monger has twisted her frustrations with her family into hatred.
Yeah,
And it's a little bit of a ham-fisted feminist story, but at least it's so I contrast that with something that popped up in my Facebook feed this week. I don't remember, just maybe one of my comic. It was one of the comic groups I'm in, and it was a panel from an early FF comic, like FF 4, 5, or 6, somewhere in there, maybe 3, when they first get their uniforms, and Sue comes around the corner and she's got her uniform on, and Reed goes, "Oh, that's awesome. You should work for Dior." And then she says, "Oh, I don't have time for that. I have to nursemaid you three." And I'm like,
hmm,
but that's a very 60s, like, that's what the woman
yeah,
does. She just takes care of the dudes. And that was pretty much her role early on. So I mean, yeah, it's 80s feminism maybe, and it perhaps is still not quite where it needs to be. And there are some panels that are a little cringy, but it certainly is a huge improvement over where the character had been.
Yeah. And by the way, something we neglected to say for people who aren't, as huge Fantastic Four fans or John Byrne fans as we are. So this is when Byrne both wrote and illustrated the comic. Like they
Correct.
basically gave him complete creative control over the Fantastic Four. So it wasn't like the typical comic where you have a writer and
Right.
an artist.
Right. Yeah, we'll talk about the art in a minute, but yeah, he even inked his own stuff for a while, which may not have been a good move.
No.
Um, I will say this though, because I just thought of it in terms of Sue Richards, excuse me. Um, whatever foibles that Byrne may or may not have had in portraying the character, it sure beats the heck out of the time that she made her FF uniform have a cleavage window. That was in the
Oh
90s.
yes.
So,
Oh my God. The cleavage window and the guns.
yes,
Oh God.
yes.
It was
And
horrible
the
period.
arm patches and shoulder patches. I'm like, oh my goodness. Well, the
Yeah.
90s, oh my goodness. Anyway,
Oh, so just as an aside, by the way, we're mentioning the
yes,
hate monger. The hate monger was an early Fantastic Four villain who
yes.
would be able to kind of twist people's minds a bit and cause them to become more hateful, hence the name. There's no relevance to the contemporary world, not like let's
Oh
say
no,
this.
no. There's the
What
scenes
would
in
the
which
hate monger do with social media? God only knows.
in the scene in the theme. I can't get. I'll spit it out. In the scene where he is agitating anti-black hatred, anti-Jewish hatred,
Yeah,
anti-women hatred. No, that there's nothing. That's all
nothing
being
there.
taken care of.
That's
Never
right.
comes
We're in
up.
an
Yeah.
enlightened society that would make Plato proud.
Oh, sure. So speaking of villains, and I was going to go to major villains, but let's start with the minor villains because more minor at least, Hate Monger
Yeah.
being one of them. What was your thought about the way he? Because you mentioned a moment ago, and I think you're correct. Part of what makes a good comic is good villains.
Yeah.
What would you say about his treatment of villains in general, and to the specific, maybe more minor ones like Hate Monger? But then we could talk about Doom and Galactus after that.
Yeah. Well, I thought what he was really good at was humanizing a lot of the villains.
Yes.
And I'll stay off the big
Hmm.
villains for the moment. But like the Puppet Master makes an
Yes.
appearance
Yes.
in some issues, and like wasn't my favorite villain in the old days.
Right.
The early issues of Fantastic Four, but less cringeworthy. You could kind of understand what was up with the guy. It wasn't
Right.
just I'm here to destroy the Fantastic Four. Terax, one of the more cosmic villains, has his powers stripped from him, and he becomes this sort of rabid dog, who's ready to grab at any opportunity for him to get revenge. And that I thought was, kind of less interesting as some of the other treatment of villains. So it was on a scale.
Right.
There would be one-off villains like the tall alien woman who was kind of interesting. The one who had sort of,
Yes.
could create, give people a sense of vertigo.
Right.
Um,
No, there are a number of ones that he does that I like that one, and I can't remember what she's called. The episodes, the issue, I keep doing it. The issues almost feel almost Twilight Zone-y, like these very
oh yeah,
self-contained, or like the one where the guy can wish reality into different ways.
yeah,
That fits in. That one very much felt like a Twilight Zone episode.
yeah. And I want to come back to that. But
Yeah.
anyway, so go. So how about you? How did you
No,
think
I
of
mean,
it?
I thought he was always really good at villains, and also making the older villains like the Puppet Master or Diablo, which he uses in a very early, maybe his
Yes.
first episode,
Yeah, it is the
first
first one.
issue. Good Lord.
I do it all the time. Don't feel
But
bad.
I feel like it's your fault. That just seems
It
fair,
is.
right?
It is.
Um,
I screw it up enough and it becomes a norm.
well, I should embrace it, right? We should just embrace that's what we say. Um, and that just can become the bit. Anyway, but most of his villains are compelling. They're interesting. They usually have, yeah, they have some humanizing quality to them, to their goals. I mean, I
Hmm.
like the fact this is a minor thing, but like the fact that Diablo is like doing all of his evil chemical magic from like a tenement because he's like he's not in
Yes.
some fancy castle. He's not in some super secret hideaway. He's just like barely getting by,
Yeah.
which is pretty good.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
you
Like
know,
his landlord shows up at one point and
yes,
he
yes.
has to, kind of deflect her and get her out of his hair. Um,
Exactly.
and this, I just want to kind of do a little bit of a detour here to say, like, the first three issues of the Byrne run really
Mhm.
showed he both understood the Fantastic Four well, really loved and loved them, but also
Yes.
he was really interested in doing different things with them. So, bringing back Diablo, and he is a menace, but also kind of comical, at the
Yes.
same time, in the fact that he is practically indigent, even though he has these elemental powers,
Right. Right. Right.
elemental magic that he can wield. The second issue, the Human Torch, is put in this unusual role as a detective that
Yes.
was really effective. And then you mentioned the Man with the Power with this very
Hmm.
Twilight Zone-ish
Yes.
uh, episode of the comic.
That's right.
There we go.
We're going to
Um,
embrace it.
I embrace it. That you see less of the Fantastic Four than this guy who isn't aware that he has this incredible power.
Yeah, like
Eh,
he wishes that he could see the FF in action, and that creates
right,
a disaster they have to deal with.
right. Like he has the wishes without the genie.
That's right.
Anyway, that those are all.
Well, and then
You know,
Ego, the Living Planet we mentioned on the Superman episode
yes,
the other day
I
in
can
two
I
through
just say
five.
like I really like Ego the Living Planet because it goes back to my Thor days. So
Right,
we
right,
say a
right.
living planet. For those who don't know, Ego, it really is a planet, right?
Yeah,
And the Fantastic Four land on Ego,
with a
and
giant
they're like,
face.
if he has a giant face, and he has antibodies that are sort of
Yes.
like these humanoid-looking things, but
Hmm.
they're mindless, and they attack the Fantastic Four, and of course they have to go find Ego's brain at the center of him. But when he was in Thor, I think he first showed up
I
in
believe that's
Thor.
correct. Yes.
I mean, this is like again where I marveled at the imagination of people who were doing Marvel comics. We've talked a little bit about like Marvel, DC, what the differences between them. I always thought that Marvel really excelled at the big ideas like that. Like, what if our villain is a planet?
Oh, agreed. Agreed.
Yeah,
Trying to see here what his first appearance was. Yeah, Thor 132 in June of 1966, created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. So there
yeah,
you go.
yeah.
Um, I mean, there's a great sequence in that where the Thing is having to go on a mission by himself.
Oh, yeah.
That I think was a really great illustration of Burns' use of the character. The artwork is quite good, I think, and just a level up from what had been happening in the book.
Oh, definitely.
Um,
Yeah, Ben is having to carry something down into the center of Ego,
mhm.
and the air pressure there is too great for the rest of the Fantastic Four, but he can endure it better than the rest of them. And kind of the way that the issue is structured, you see that at the beginning, and
That's right.
so
Yes, there's
I,
flashback
yeah. So the
stuff.
rest of it's a flashback to how did he get there, but it's a great hook. Like, what the hell is going on here?
Right,
With
exactly,
yeah,
exactly. It was really good, really
yeah.
good. Um, so let's talk the big two, right? Doctor Doom, Victor Von Doom.
Mhm.
Is Victor Von? I mean, did he ever finish his doctorate? Is he ABD? I don't know. Anyway,
I'd love to see what his dissertation committee said.
Victor Von Doom, ABD.
Yeah,
Um,
an
Kind of
oral
reminds
defense,
me.
an oral defense featuring Victor Von Doom.
That's right. I mean, after the whole thing with the face, did he finish school? I don't. I mean,
Yeah.
it reminds me of, and this is a digression, but I always think about this. I once got a job application sent to me when I think I was chair of political science or dean, and the person in question listed on their CV such and so ABD, but they were ABD from like the 90s. And I'm telling you right now, folks, if you're ABD from the 90s, you're just a master's student. Just forget the ABD thing.
Yeah, and we all hope that you finish someday,
That's
but
right.
yeah, color us a little skeptical.
Mm.
Welcome to
Anyway,
Ancient University Geeks. I'm
ancient.
your
Oh,
co-host, Tom Grant.
and I'm your grumpy dean, ex-dean, Stephen Taylor. There's no other kind of dean than an ex-dean that's not grumpy, I don't think. Anyway,
Well,
getting back
Animal
to
House
this,
showed that.
of course.
Yeah, that
Double
was a
secret
documentary.
probation.
Yeah.
He was dean of students, I think. That's the worst job on a campus. All right, never mind. Back to this.
Okay, back to the
Um,
Fantastic Four.
Back to the Fantastic Four. So let's talk about Doctor Doom. I
Doctor
think
Doom.
that I'm of the view that Byrne elevated Doctor Doom in a way that had not really been the case before, even better than Lee and Kirby dealt with him, and I
Yeah.
think set the stage for any good Doctor Doom story that's happened since this run. What do you think? How about that for
Yeah.
a superlative?
Well, so Doctor Doom was pretty much defined by his plans.
Yes.
So, he'd show up again in the Fantastic Four. He would have a new evil plan for their destruction, and the
Yes.
Fantastic Four would thwart him, and then it was just the clock ticking to the next Doctor Doom authored evil plan. And here you got to see more of Doom as a ruler of the
Yes.
fictional kingdom, Latveria, and other aspects of Doom that were so much better. So much better. So, yes, I enthusiastically agree with you.
So yeah, it made me think. Yeah, speaking of his plans, and it may have been. I'm not gonna cite an episode number
Yeah.
because I'm not sure I can remember for sure. But there's a fantastic, no pun intended, scene that Richards has been captured by Doctor Doom in the castle in Latveria, and Doom leaves him behind with the phrase is some to the point of, I have to leave you till my automated murder room. I have other things to attend
Yes.
to. The automated murder room is just the best. Also, really stupid, but it's kind of like Blofeld in
Right.
I expect you to die, but I'm going to leave the room now.
Yes, exactly.
But regardless, but this Doom. So Doom was often, I think, a good villain in the 60s and 70s, and sometimes a superlatively good villain in the 60s and 70s, but often also just a ranting lunatic who just wants to destroy things,
Right.
especially the Fantastic Four. And I thought that Byrne did an excellent job, as you say, of giving you better motivations. The whole ruler thing we'll talk about. I think I'll leave to talk about the stories later, but the way that Byrne wrote, the way Doom ruled Latveria was actually quite interesting.
Yeah, he actually cared about the country,
Yeah,
right? He wasn't just some sort of power mad
right.
tyrant.
I,
Uh,
I love the way he makes because the origin of Doctor Doom, for those that are not familiar, right, which we get early on in Fantastic Four, the first several issues by Lee and Kirby, is that he and Reed were both in grad school together. Doom was doing some experiment that included magic that went awry, and his face was disfigured, and that's why he wears the mask. I love the bit that Byrne takes that into this height of vanity, and that
yeah.
when he was damaged in that experiment, it was just a scar across his face.
Hmm.
He
Yeah.
doesn't get the massive scarring until he puts the hot mask on when he gets the mask, and then that's when the real disfigurement takes place. But the Doom was Byrne did a good job, I think, of emphasizing Doom's vanity to help better explain some of his animosity toward Richards in a way that I think was a little more cartoony early on.
Right.
And I also think that he made Doom just, I don't know, more calculating, more interesting, a little more honorable in some ways.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
A little more unpredictable in that sense, but
yes,
in
I
a
think.
credible way, not
Yeah,
not
I
not
think
not a
that's
random way. And at this time, Doom was still supposed to be the ultimate Marvel supervillain,
right.
and to maintain that particular moniker, you needed to have some humanity to him. You needed to have something more than just evil plans.
That's right.
Yeah, like
Uh, that,
there's a really great uh, there's a really great one shot where Doctor Doom succeeds at conquering the world,
mhm,
and then what happens next? You
mhm.
know, that was great.
Yeah.
That's a much more interesting story than I will crush the Fantastic Four.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Yeah,
But speaking to his ego, I just remember there's a great sequence in one issue. Oh, I said it right that time. Now I feel
you
like
did.
I blew
We
the.
should stop doing this and just like stick to because it's going to be
Yeah,
annoying to her.
I know it is. I
It's funny
know.
for us, not for them.
But they say you make art for yourself and hope people like it. I don't know. Anyway,
Okay, true,
I'm
true.
But you're not wrong. You're not wrong. It'll probably annoy me on the re-listen. Anyway, where he is talking to one of the Doombots, and
Yeah.
he's upset because there's a scratch that came from Arcade, a villain that was in an X-Men episode, and the um, the Doombot said, "Well, we didn't kill him because you thought you might need him," and Doom
Yeah.
just blows the Doombot up and says, "Doom needs no one." It just fits
Right.
the character quite well, that I appreciated. At any rate, so anything else about? I think we'll come back. I think we have our favorite and least favorite, and there's several Doom stories on both of our lists.
Right.
So
Yeah, we won't get into that.
I'll hold off that. How about Galactus?
Yeah, I mean, again, humanizing somebody,
Hmm.
who's an alien, but was interesting in the Byrne run was you got to see a little bit more of day in the life of Galactus, which sounds like a
Right.
weird thing, but like there's that conversation he has with Death that
Yes.
was kind of an interesting issue that was revealing. We get to find out that Galactus, the consumer of worlds, is really kind of an essential part of the universe.
Yes.
Um, that was really, I think, an interesting twist on somebody we just had as this engine of destruction. Galactus was a
Right.
guy, but he could have just been a comet that was hitting planets for, you
A
know,
living comet.
a living comet.
But no, to your point, right? So it's kind of funny. On the one hand, you're right. I think Byrne does humanize Galactus in the sense that we learn more about him as a person.
Yeah,
But on the other hand, he makes him into a force of nature,
right.
that changes the calculus to some degree.
Yeah,
I mean, part of the problem with Galactus, because Galactus is cool and interesting, and like in some ways the ultimate villain. I mean, he's here to eat the planet,
yes.
but you can only have him come eat the planet so many times,
Hmm. Right.
and so
And here he is again.
and here he is
And
again,
here he is again.
and you can only do the ultimate nullifier bit,
Right.
so many times, which is this weapon that will destroy Galactus that Reed finds in his spaceship. Why Galactus is dumb enough to keep a weapon in your spaceship that can destroy Galactus, I couldn't say, but so it goes.
I mean, I've
Regardless,
got an ultimate nullifier right here in the closet. You're saying that's a bad idea?
it's a bad idea, Tom. Bad idea. Um, the I do like the way also he kind of plays with the fact that Galactus is trying not to eat inhabited worlds, right? He needs a
Yeah.
certain kind of planet. I guess dead planets don't work.
Right.
But
But
it's
inhabited planets are tastier.
that's apparently it's kind of like
Yeah.
City Alpha 5, City Alpha 6. You got to find one that
Right.
can take the matrix but doesn't have the matrix
Right.
of life. Anyway, but he gives Galactus a gravitas, but makes him into a character more than just, but also a force
Right.
of nature. It's just a kind of a nice magic trick, that he does, and I'm hopeful to anticipate. Well, I'll leave it at that. Are there any other villains we haven't mentioned, or anything else about Galactus before we talk about some other things? And we'll come back to stories because Galactus features heavily in
Right.
my list of positive stories.
Yeah, I mean, I think that the upshot of that is that it made you more interested in seeing Galactus in Fantastic Four and other comics
Hmm.
because there was more
Hmm.
to him, right? So like
Yes.
there's a really good again looking at one shots. There's a very good one shot drawn by Mobius
Hmm.
of Galactus and the Silver Surfer.
Yeah.
And
Hmm.
it'd be very easy to take a villain like Galactus and again have no depth, be just the equivalent of a comet or an asteroid hitting the planet, and it's just then and in some sort of puzzle that the superheroes have to solve in order to make him go away until the next time. But seeing again, a day in the life of Galactus or seeing him struggle with trying not to consume inhabited worlds or other interesting things about Galactus. I think that has to start with just a little bit more human depth to the character.
Oh, I agree. That reminds me too of there was a mini series for Hercules that was in this period, but Galactus figures in some of the episodes,
Yeah,
and and I think it reflects the Burns influence on the character, the way the character's treated in that
Yeah.
miniseries.
Yeah. I would say a disappointment for me of Burns' treatment of villains was Annihilus.
Oh, yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, it didn't. I agree with you. Although there's a hilarious panel where Nihilus answers the phone when someone calls,
Yes.
and he's like holding this phone, a wired phone. It's like that's great.
Right.
But
So
yeah,
Annihilus, for, again, listeners, if you're not a
yeah,
big Fantastic Four fan, so there is effectively an alternate universe called the Negative Zone. And some of the best issues, we'll talk about issues we like. Some of the best issues of the Byrne run, but also I would say the Lee Kirby run were
I
set
agree. Yes.
in the Negative Zone. And Annihilus is this warlord in the Negative Zone who seeks to, as his name implies, see, his parents just gave him the wrong name.
This is
It
the
was all
problem.
their fault.
It's
You
like
call
naming
your
your kid Earl Roberts. You shouldn't have
I,
done that.
it's called a nihilist. And the Fantastic Four had tangled with him before. You know, he was out to get into our world, our universe, and destroy
Right.
it. But here there was Byrne didn't bother to do anything more with him. Like he gets out of the Negative Zone, he rages around the Baxter building where the Fantastic Four live for a while, answers the phone, doesn't
Yeah.
take a message. The jerk. It just wasn't. It didn't work. It didn't work.
I silly side note on that story. I found not that I was wanting anything opposite, but I thought it was hilarious. He hangs Alicia upside down, but somehow her skirt has enough static cling not to fall down. It's great. It's a perfect.
I
It's
know.
just anyway.
Oh, so here's something actually I want to mention too. So before we get on, we're going to go to do issues next.
Um, I was going to ask about supporting characters real quick,
Oh,
and
supporting
then
characters, good, because
yeah.
that's exactly what I wanted to talk about.
Okay, awesome. No, let's just we can make the transition. I mean, I agree with. I'll say this. There's some great negatives on stories, and even some of the characters he makes up are more interesting than the legacy characters
Yeah,
because both Blastar, which is again
the
the names of
living bomb burst.
Bomb Burst, yeah, which is one of the things I remember from the cartoon from the 70s. Because every time he say his name, he had to say he was a living bomb burst every time.
Yes.
Um,
Do you know there's a great, speaking of John Byrne, there's a great Marvel team up with Spider-Man and Red Sonja.
okay,
And when she appears, says, I am something Red Sonja, she devil of the Hyrcanian steppes. Like who does that? Who said
hey, it's kind of like being ABD. You got to
It's
put it
like
after your name.
I know, like how do you do? I'm Tom Grant, Man Devil of Denver, Colorado.
Anyway, supporting
Maybe
characters.
I
And
should
we,
try that. I don't know. Maybe it would work.
you know,
We'll see if that has legs.
at any rate, um, what supporting characters did you find noteworthy in the Burn run, or what was it you wanted to go to? You had a thought.
Oh, I wanted to go to Franklin.
Yeah, Franklin.
So
That's one
Franklin
on my
is
list.
is, is Reed and Sue's son. I didn't reread the whole run of the Byrne era. I read, like about
Well,
half of it, and I started
so
to,
listeners, I'm going to say I'm the more dedicated co-host because I read every
yeah.
single one of these things.
You are a better human being than me.
That's where we go. That's all I'm
I
asking
know,
for. I
but
usually get the hate, so it's okay.
of the two-thirds that I definitely read and then started skipping around a little bit towards the end, I I just felt like he didn't really know what to do with Franklin. He was there.
I think that's fair.
He had mental blocks put on his powers
Yes.
before the Byrne issue started, and he's a mutant who has incredible powers. That's why the mental blocks are there because he's a child.
Hmm.
But it just never goes anywhere, which is probably fine. I mean, in a way, Byrne gets handed this supporting character who
Right.
is intrinsically difficult to work with.
Yeah, I didn't entirely like the way he tried to write the dialogue.
Yeah.
It wasn't quite as bad as like old school Superman where everything was me am baby, but the but there was a little silliness. I kind of like the issue where he gets accelerated in age and they have to
Yeah.
figure out who he is and get him to, that was That was a decent episode.
Issue.
I always say I was going to let it go. There, you
I
corrected me.
I'm going to police us now.
Um, uh, but yeah, I think there, and I've only read a smattering, and I kind of have jumped around some. Future treatments of Franklin are more interesting than anything Byrne did with
Yeah.
him. That's the one thing that I would say that he did not really create a pathway for for that to be particularly interesting or useful. Um, I did like, by the way, even though as much as I like Ben Grimm and the Thing is one of my favorite characters, I liked when She-Hulk was the substitute for him when he was off
Yes,
doing
I
his
did
thing.
too. I did too.
I think Byrne writes that character as well, if not better than anyone.
Yeah.
And it was kind of fun to have because she just was enjoying herself the whole time, which I thought was
Yeah.
pretty cool.
Yeah, and for those of out there who've seen She-Hulk, the TV show,
Yes.
um, that sort of meta aspect of She-Hulk is
Hmm.
not new.
No,
And it really was started with John Byrne. I thought it worked better in the comics.
it did.
Sometimes things don't translate from one medium to another that great, but I mean, She-Hulk is almost John Byrne's character.
Yeah, he didn't create her, but he really defined her. I think
Yeah,
starting with this run, and then what you're talking about is she had her own book, and it was a time in which John Byrne was at the height of his powers. He could do whatever he wanted, and he wanted to create like what if She-Hulk realized she was in a comic book?
yeah,
So wrote a lot of fourth wall breaking and kind of interesting. I remember there's one episode where she swims through the different panels in a kind
yeah.
of fun way. At any rate, um, the but I thought it was fun. Of course, it was also the fact that the Thing was parallel in his own book during this period of time, which Byrne was also writing.
Right,
That made the absence not feel like an absence.
right.
So there was that.
Okay. Well, others, the Inhumans, is
He
it?
does a.
So how do you stress the in part of that? Is it Inhumans or Inhumans?
I always say Inhumans.
Okay, those were good issues. I thought
Yeah.
when they moved their home, the Great Refuge, to the moon, and
Yes.
anyway, those appearances were really good in the Byrne
I
run.
agree, and it was reminiscent of the Inhumans. I thought during the Lee and Kirby era in a way that was nice and also sort of amplified their legend because yeah, they're on the moon now. I thought that was great. I liked um, I liked the Frankie Ray Nova storyline,
Oh yeah, me
which
too.
we mentioned before, which was this was. I mean, it was a little hokey that she was somehow the stepdaughter of the original of the scientist who invented the Human Torch back
Yeah,
in the,
yeah,
and then
yeah,
she had these powers. But it was interesting for Johnny to have this girlfriend who was like kind of his equal, but then she gets seduced by out there and the whole Galactus thing. It becomes Nova.
yeah.
Well, she became
Well,
Nova, and she became the Herald of Galactus.
I think seduced is a little unfair. I would say that she was excited, for the
Okay,
out. Yeah,
seduce is not the right word. I think she was
yeah.
intrigued and
Oh yeah, yeah,
maybe self-seduced. I didn't mean that Galactus seduced her. She was seduced by the idea of going out into
yeah. There you
space.
go. There you go.
That's really what I'm
Yeah.
trying to say.
Yeah,
Um,
that a young 20 something woman, kind of is handed this chance to explore the universe, save lives by steering Galactus towards uninhabited planets.
oh no, but she doesn't though. She doesn't care. That
Yeah, I
I
know.
think that's an
Yeah,
important part of her character. She's like, what's a few less bug-eyed monsters if I get to go out there? That was her
right.
attitude about it.
Yeah, I
I
know.
mean,
Yeah,
she's the one that
yeah.
takes her to the
True.
scroll homeworld and eats the scroll homeworld.
Yeah. So
So
it's kind of
yeah,
like more her to blame
yeah.
for
Oh
that than
yes,
yeah,
absolutely, absolutely.
yeah.
Um, I mean, a throwaway that I'll mention. It was kind of funny when Aunt Petunia finally shows up and she's not
Oh,
that
that's
old.
great. That was
Yeah,
great. I really like that.
that's just a throwaway thing, really. But this is the
Yeah.
Thing's Aunt Petunia, his favorite aunt. He's mentioned her since way back at the beginning of the Kirby Lee run. We never had seen her, and this woman shows up and she's relatively young, and Johnny like, this is Aunt Petunia. Anyway, it was pretty good.
Yeah.
Any other characters you want to mention before we talk about the art, and then we'll talk about our favorite stories?
Not really, except I'll say that he handles some of the really brief appearances usually pretty well, like Wyatt Wingfoot,
Yeah.
a guy who was around in the early days and kind of faded out, and he comes back. Um, Yeah, in general, I thought Byrne did justice to these characters and had a
Hmm.
good sense how much to use them.
I think that's fair. So let's talk about the art for a minute. I don't. It's an audio medium, and we really can't talk too much about it. Although I'm sure we'll post on our socials any number of examples of all of this.
Hmm.
But I love Burns' art. We've talked about this before. We don't have to belabor it. I do
Yeah,
think that if you look at his contribution on this book, there is over time some variations, and I think the variations are almost entirely due to inking, whether it's
yeah,
the inkers that are chosen or Byrne inking his own art. And I think at some point, if I couldn't confirm this, but I read a couple of places online that suggested that he was almost penciling in ink at one point to
mm,
speed up the process. And there are some issues where the art is a bit muddled looking, especially in certain panels. It doesn't mean that all of it's that way, but I think it diminishes his art.
yes,
And I would and to sort of further prove that, right? I think if you look at which you've mentioned many times on the podcast now, the Man of Steel run, the inking on that's great, and his art really
yeah,
shines through. Or even if you look at the Elsewind stuff, which are just his pencils, I think it looks
yeah,
better.
yeah.
But
Or his X-Men issues that are inked
oh,
by
well,
Terry Austin.
Terry Austin is the best inker for John Byrne without any doubt.
Yeah, but inking his own stuff, and it's hard to tell. So he was doing too much at this time.
Yes, that's
So
part
he
of the
was,
problem. You can tell because it's not because he's doing some of his own inking early on, and it doesn't seem to diminish the artwork. But yeah, he's doing the Fantastic Four and Alpha Flight and a bunch of other stuff too, I think.
yeah, and so it's hard. Go back to the sort of natural cyclical nature of comic books. It's hard to parse whether it was getting near the end of Burns' run that he was just kind of done with doing the Fantastic Four.
Right.
That anybody who was writing the same thing for issue after issue, just as writers who publish books get tired after a
Mhm.
while of publishing the same character over and over again. Whatever how much of it was that led to a lesser quality in the later issues, or just he was spreading himself vastly too thin.
Right. Hard to say.
Hard to say.
Um, so let's switch then. Let's just talk about favorite and lack of favorite. That's not the way you say that, Stephen.
Less favorite,
Less
least
favorite,
favorite.
least favorite. I do speak English. Me am speaking English. So what what are your top five, 3 to 5 favorite stories that he did?
Okay, so I would say, uh, well, definitely "This Land Is Mine," the Doctor
Hmm.
Doom, where he goes back uh, his country, Latveria, that he used to rule, is a wreck. An earlier Fantastic Four pre-Burn issue
Hmm.
presented this, kind of happy ending where Doctor Doom is booted out of power and somebody else becomes king of Latveria. Well, turns out that was not a good outcome because
Hmm.
that guy turns out to be a
Zorba.
bit Zorba, uh, corrupt and incompetent and sadistic.
Yes.
Um, so the story is around kind of Doctor Doom taking back the rulership of Latveria. I just that was terrific. I really good.
That's on my list as well. I will say that I had read before this run, I had read those when Zorba takes over Latveria stories. So
Yeah,
I do feel like Byrne took some license with the previous story because he was, but
yeah,
in terms of the actual story itself, I think it was actually quite fascinating, right? And
yeah,
I think it does establish Doom as not as just malevolent as he was often cast in the past. And
yeah.
it does raise some questions about the Fantastic Four's meddling in international politics,
Right.
and also, raises some questions about authoritarianism, I suppose. Although it's hard to fully root for Doom because he's also a murdering megalomaniacal person at times. But anyway, hey,
Yeah. Well, and I think that is not the only time we see Reed kind of facing the fact that he solved a puzzle at one point,
that's right.
but he didn't foresee what came after the solution.
Right, that's right.
All right, so that's my first top five.
So
How about you?
my first one was it's the Galactus Nova stories from 242 through 244, especially 243, Everybody Against Galactus.
Yeah,
I think that's a great Galactus story in general. We already mentioned the Frankie Ray part of it, but I also, as I've alluded to before in previous podcasts, I like the idea that, hey, the planet's being attacked by someone who might eat it. Maybe all the heroes, or at least a certain
right.
large number of them, ought to get involved in this particular fight. So we get the
Well,
Avengers, we
yeah,
get Doctor Strange, we get even Daredevil and Spider-Man show up. It's just I just well done, I thought.
yeah, yeah. If it's happening in New York,
Yes.
yeah, and I really like that was on my list too, and I would say the fact that Reed makes the convincing case that they shouldn't just let Galactus die. This is
Yes.
before they know even that he's intrinsic to the universe,
That's right.
but just, yes, he was going to eat our planet, but, we kind of figured out an arrangement with Galactus that would work. And, he is a living creature and we shouldn't just let him die. That,
That's
that
right.
was good. That was good.
So what else do you have?
I have this. I don't remember the name of the town that they were in, the fake town, but the Doctor
Littleville.
Doom. What was it?
Littleville
Littleville.
with D's.
Okay, not Little.
Not Lilville. I think
Little.
it's
Okay,
Littleville.
Littleville. Yeah. The that Doctor Doom story where the Fantastic Four are kind of reduced to these miniatures.
It's a
Uh,
puppet master story as well.
Yeah, so the puppet master is this person who can make puppets,
Yes.
and can put people's minds in the puppets. And so Doctor Doom enlists him to basically create, if they figure out what's going on, hell for the Fantastic Four. That
Yes.
they're in this suburban fictional town. They don't have their powers.
Yes.
Reed is reduced to being sort of a bad adjunct professor at the local college, and anyway, that was excellent.
I'm guessing he's an associate professor that can't get a full promotion, and he's just haunted by that.
Welcome to
Again,
Ancient University, geek.
exactly. I can do this all day long.
Okay,
So the no, it's that I know I bought that book after it was out. I remember, but it's one of those that sticks in my head, and maybe in some ways it is my favorite. Maybe I should have made it first. I remember buying it at Lone Star Comics and Science Fiction in Dallas, Texas, and sitting in my grandmother's living room reading it.
right.
And it was the episode that really got me into the
You're goading me now.
characters.
You're goading me.
Maybe.
Okay.
Uh, it's for me to know and you to find out. Anyway, but the characterization of Doom in that one is amazing
Yeah.
because mostly he's just like taunting them, right?
Yeah.
He's the department chair, and they're all evil. I can say that as having been one.
Okay.
Harassing Reed and not giving him the equipment that he needs to do his lab work. I mean,
Yeah.
well, in retrospect, it's truly hilarious. But also the sort of Ben is actually happy because he's actually married to Alicia and living as a mechanic
Yeah.
but Reed is the one that really is the one that's the most tortured. They keep having these dreams about their origin story,
Right.
and eventually Reed figures it out in a way that really I thought really also pivoted to Reed's intellect as being his superpower because it goes from being sort of muddled and the absent-minded professor to like a lot more resolute. The art does it, the dialogue does it. It's just an impressive story, I think. And I won't detail the entire thing, but eventually they win because they're heroes. But that's just a fantastic one episode story.
Right. Yes. Yeah, and it was good that it wasn't just where I will crush the Fantastic Four.
Yes,
It was I'm going to get my
humiliate them.
revenge, humiliate them, and specifically Reed, who bears the
Yes,
most animus from Doom,
yes,
just reduce him to a gibbering wreck.
yes. What's next on your list? Or
Um,
is it my turn? I can't
no,
remember now.
I would. I mentioned before that early issue that Byrne did, where uh, a priest shows up at the Baxter Building, and
Hmm.
he has a letter from somebody this person who was on death row
Oh yes.
for Johnny.
Hmm.
And he said, I did some really bad things, but I didn't do the murder that I'm being executed for." And Johnny
Hmm.
has to play detective. That was really good.
Yeah, it was a
That
very
was a
good story.
really well written story. And again, it was interesting to see a character put into an unusual circumstance for them.
Hmm. So next on my list is episode 249 to 250, which is when the gladiator shows up chasing the
Oh
scrolls
yeah, yeah,
and thinks that the Fantastic Four is scrolls. And that was I really enjoyed that story. I won't
me too.
belabor it, but I like that one a lot. How about what's
Yeah.
your next one?
So I would say the negative zone exploration episodes
Hmm.
were really great,
Yes.
and I really felt like there he could have free reign to do whatever he wanted. He was
Yes.
constrained by having villains with long backstories or trying to be shoved into some continuity that Marvel wanted the Fantastic Four to be part of at that
Right.
time. Instead, like specifically the one where they are on this ship that
Hmm.
escaped a doomed planet. It's been like 10,000 years. They've been flying around looking for a planet to settle, or they have a destination, but the computers are corrupted and they don't
Yes.
know quite how to find it. Anyway, that was terrific.
That's really
You
good.
mentioned the science fiction aspects of the
Yes.
science Fantastic Four. That was, I think, the most science fiction-ish of all.
Agreed. There are some of those stories and some others too, but I've made the Twilight Zone comp, but there's also you can tell Burns a Star Trek fan because
Yeah,
some of those almost feel like Star Trek stories.
sure, sure.
Um, so my fifth one, I'm going to go a single story, issue number 267, which is when Sue is in the hospital pregnant and she'd gotten pregnant in the negative zone.
Yeah,
And there were radiation problems, and he has to go get Dr. Octopus to help because he's
yes,
an expert on radiation, which spoiler alert, concludes in Sue having a miscarriage. I think it's just a really it's a very personal story with the characters. It's a character-driven
yeah.
story. It's also sort of an interesting action story with Reed trying to fight Doc Ock and to get him to come in, and Doc
Hmm.
Ock's sort of like psychological problems. Uh,
Yes.
I just it was a really I think one that sticks in my head after all these years.
Yeah, and the only one other issue I would mention would be the Sue turns evil.
Yeah, it's really good.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that was really good.
Malice. So what are something you did not like?
Ah, man, I would say Jean Grey returns.
Yep,
That didn't
for
work.
for reasons we discussed in the X-Men episode, so we
Yeah,
don't really
without
have to.
belaboring them. How about you? What else?
Yeah, I mean the I know we both have the Beyonder. That was I blame
Yeah.
Marvel editorial more than I blame
Oh yeah.
Byrne for that one. I did not like the fact that Doctor Doom got his body back. That's a whole other because the Beyonder just sort of snapped his fingers. That didn't care for that.
Yeah. Well, so
Um,
just to let people know, I mean, the norm in comics for a long time was every year you would have some crossover event that involved every comic book,
right,
and the genesis of this really was DC decided to clean up the fact that it had a lot of different alternate universes and just like merge them all in one. And of course, something like that, not just universal but cross universal, would involve everybody in
right.
one way or another, and all the shenanigans that happen around that. But then like every time summer would roll around, the planet or the universe would be at risk, both in Marvel and DC. So you'd have, this godlike character like the Beyonder mucking around the planet, you know, having adventures,
Yeah,
helping
and
people in there.
this is part of Secret Wars 2, which was
Yeah.
even lamer than Secret Wars 1.
Yeah. That it just,
And
it,
anyway,
yeah. So that was shoved in, and the dire wraiths, these villains were another thing that happened during one of these crossover events that got shoved in, and I it didn't really work for anybody for the most part. And I would say in at least half the cases that these, like the Infinity Gauntlet, I think it definitely worked, but
sure.
these other kind of trashy excuses to have people buy as many comics as possible because you couldn't get the whole story from one of these comics. You had to read all the comics to get the whole story. Anyway, I always regretted when anybody was pulled into that, including the Fantastic Four.
I'll pick one more, and which is the story with Reed's dad, which
Yeah,
still doesn't make I. It doesn't make sense to me. I'm not quite sure what the point was. I know there's a connection to Rama Tut, theoretically to Kang, and maybe even to Doctor Doom. But even reading it, I remember reading it the first time. I've read it since I read it the first time, and I read it recently. Every time I read it, I'm like, I don't really care to figure out what all this means. And it just kind of
right.
seemed a bit forced. So
Yeah,
I didn't.
and it is a device, I think, when a writer fails that you reach for that somebody is a relative,
Yeah.
you know, I'm your second cousin. Oh my God. And I thought you were a supervillain, but you're just a misunderstood person on the far branches of my family tree.
Reed, I am your third cousin twice removed.
Yes, exactly. What else would I put? Eh, the death of Doctor Doom in when Terrax returns was hokey, where projects his mind into somebody.
I kind of
I
liked that story actually, but I didn't like the resolution was
uh,
terrible with the Beyonder.
yeah, I don't like coming up with devices like that that then kind of break the character. Like okay, well, if he could just hop from body to body now, then
Fair enough. I mean, that's fair. I like the fact that it was his hubris that he messed him up,
oh yeah, that was good.
and I kind of
That
like
part was good.
the notion that he is dissing Aunt May in the crowd because he had taken over this guy's body. But again, the
Right.
solution was ridiculous. And
Yeah,
the
just
guy that
the rest of the issue was fun. It was just that particular
I
twist
can
to it I
accept
didn't
that, and
like.
I like the Terex stuff. And that was a callback to stealing the Silver Surface powers back in an earlier era.
Yeah,
I also like the part where the scientist is going to kill him, but he throws the scientist in the chamber and he
right.
gets fried by the power cosmic. Anyway, but I take your point about that from that moment on though, because there's no good resolution. I really expected at some point a clone body or some other kind of explanation to work, which is still hokey in its own way, but just I don't like anything where it's a just a total reset without even a decently dumb explanation for it. Just the Beyonder in his disco clothes shows up and everything's back the way that it was.
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, um, is there any miscellaneous thing that we haven't mentioned that you, good or bad, that you want to mention?
Um, well, we talked about how long he stayed on.
Yeah, yeah.
I think that probably the lessons of this run by John Byrne is, you can honor the core of a particular I hate to use the word property. It almost diminishes it a bit, but you take a franchise or whatever you want to call it, and there's something essential about it, whether it's Sherlock Holmes or
Hmm.
Godzilla or whatever, and you can still be creative with it.
That's right.
And Byrne was really good at capturing the essence of the Fantastic Four and all the cute little callbacks to the Lee Kirby era.
Right.
Like Doctor Doom is talking to one of the Fantastic Four. He's just like in this little red bubble.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
remember that from some of the Kirby issues.
Right.
So I would say that would be lesson one. Lesson two is you can have goofy fun at times while still
Yes.
being serious. There are other geeky things that we like Buffy. I thought was really good at that, the Buffy the TV
Hmm.
show. But also just be aware that after a while things run out of steam. you know
That's
and
fair. Yeah. That's
it
totally
doesn't
true.
last forever, so
Better.
cherish these issues, hug them close to yourself as long as you have them.
Yeah. I mean, everything runs out of steam. And it's better
Yeah.
to go out, but better to go out on top than to maybe not go out on top. Um,
Well, would you think that these would be good issues if somebody didn't read comics at all, or did but hadn't really been into the Fantastic Four? Would these be a good place to start?
I think so, yes.
I think so too.
I think, for example, that the first one he does is the Diablo one we talked about does a really good
Yeah.
job of establishing who the characters are, what their powers are, and how they interact with one another,
Yeah.
without it being a let's tell the origin story for the 35th thousandth time.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah, yeah, I think so.
And I think anyone inevitably will be a little lost if you don't
Oh,
know
I mean
the
that's
Fantastic Four, as with any comic. But I think it is very approachable, though.
oh, I think so. Yes.
Yeah.
I'll the only two things I have left on my list that I want to well, one in particular. I did not like the one thing I did not like
Yeah.
the when Ben is off on the other planet and during the She-Hulk run, Johnny gets involved with Alicia. And
Yeah.
thought that
Oh,
was a
right.
I thought that was a betrayal of the character in a way that didn't really make organic sense.
No.
And of course, this eventually gets retconned as being a Skrull, but that's a whole different problem much later. But it was just,
It
I
doesn't
just
make it
did,
any better.
no, it doesn't make it any better at all. It doesn't change the moral component to it, nor the sort of story component. I didn't care for that. I also didn't like the part where Byrne is actually inserts himself into the story during the trial of
Oh,
Reed
yes.
Richards.
Thank you. I forgot about that.
That's so silly. And they've done it over the years. I know the conceit in Marvel Comics is that the comics are just real stories that happen to these characters, and the comic book is just like publicizing them. But it's just silly. I didn't need that.
Well, so I'm glad you brought that up, and I feel bad I forgot about it actually. But the having John Byrne in the trial of Reed Richards
Hmm.
issue seemed like the height of self-indulgence.
Yeah, I agree. I totally.
Yeah, just like everyone takes him so seriously, this random guy who just happens to, like, as you said, he's a documentarian
Right.
in the Marvel universe. He's
Right.
not
Right.
doing anything significant, and yet everyone's sort of oddly deferring to him at times. It's
No, it's very strange.
yeah,
But I mean, that that gets to something we didn't talk about, and I didn't really plan to talk about. I mean, for all the praise we heap upon John Byrne, he was, I guess, still is because he's still alive. His birthday's right around now. I forget how old he is.
okay,
In his late 70s. He's a bit full of himself.
yeah,
In a way that I think is a little off-putting, to be honest. And if
hmm
there's some interviews I'm sure I'll post at some point that are interesting, but he clearly isn't a humble fellow. Let's just put it that way. But nonetheless, has made some really good comics.
yeah.
So one last question: what from this run would you like to see reflected in the upcoming movie that we'll be seeing in a
Boy,
couple of weeks?
I love this question. I wouldn't try to cram too much. I think
Oh, I agree.
that's the hard thing. Like if we're gonna have Galactus and the Silver Surfer in the movie, there's plenty to do.
You don't want a side plot where Paste Pot Pete shows up and tries to infiltrate the Baxter building and
Ah, Paste
sorry.
Pot Pete and Irma Bombeck, the living bombburst.
Anyway, not I agree. I don't
So
want I
I
don't
would yeah. So I would say it's not particular characters or um or particular plots or subplots. I would
right.
say just like don't turn Ben Grimm into a punchline.
Okay.
He's one of the most interesting characters in the Marvel universe, and it would be a shame to waste him.
Agreed.
And number two, I really like, as we talked about, that idea that even the smartest people have limits.
Yes.
And even the most powerful people also have limits, and you have those two things together in the Fantastic Four. A little bit of that might be like a good thematic element to toss in, but I don't want Paste Pot Pete. I don't want you know Daredevil to happen to swing by or something like that. No, I don't need
Yeah.
all that.
And if anybody thinks I'm making up Paste Pot Pete, I am not.
That's who they renamed him the
The
Trapster,
Trapster, yes.
which is
But
not that much better a name.
no, he has a glue gun.
Yeah, but we're all wondering where John Malkovich fits in this movie. Like he kind of
Oh,
looks from the pre-production stills like the Red Ghost, which is another like
interesting.
deep callback.
I have avoided even more about this movie than I did about Superman. So I think I do remember there being a reference to Malkovich, but I did not remember that was the case.
Oh, okay.
I will. So thanks, Tom, spoiling that for me. No.
Oh, I didn't know. There are
Anyway,
limits to what even the smartest people, and I'm not even the
that's
smartest person,
you're just
can do.
proving that's right. So I mean, I have some hope for the Ben Grimm character because he's played by, and I hope I don't butcher his name, Eben Moss-Bacharach, who was
Yeah.
in The Bear. He's great.
My favorite character from The Bear is
He's a
Richie.
great actor.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And his performance is
Oh,
terrific.
stellar. He was great in
Yeah.
Andor too, but he was really
Yeah.
shines in The Bear. So I have some hope for that. I like Pedro Pascal quite a lot. I still find it be a kind of an odd cast. So
Yeah, me
I'm wondering how
too.
it's going to work out. And the mustache, I'm not to belabor that, but I'm like, it does kind of
I don't
trip
care
me a
about
little bit,
that.
but it's not that big. I mean, it's not a big deal by no stretch of the imagination.
Well,
But
he
it
is
just,
legally required to be in every
well, that's,
movie now.
well, the reason the mustache trips me is not because, oh my God, Reed can't have a mustache. It's that Pedro Pascal always has a mustache, so it makes me think, oh, look, there's Pedro Pascal. That's really why
Yes.
it bumps me, not because I care about the facial hair question. Quite frankly, contemporary Reed has a beard, but I am intrigued by the fact this is apparently set in the 60s,
Hmm.
and I don't know how that's all going to play
Oh,
out in
yeah,
terms
definitely.
of
Definitely.
because I know not again spoilers, but I know that at least the Ben Grimm character is in Avengers Doomsday,
Hmm.
and maybe the other ones are as well. So anyway, but I am looking forward to this film, and I because none of the previous ones were any good. Now I will confess I didn't watch the most recent one. I watched the other ones, and what I saw of the most recent one just didn't do it for me. I watched part of it. Actually, I did watch part of it.
So maybe Pedro
It was
Pascal is a supervillain, and his superpower is he takes over the bodies and parts of other actors and therefore becomes
the
the
living
star of every
mustache.
movie, the
Uh,
living mustache. It's just a
okay,
thought. Just a
just a
thought.
thought. Just
Just
a
a
thought.
thought.
Okay. So yeah, I'm hoping that Burns' version of Galactus shines through in this movie.
Yeah.
I'm hoping that it has a family feel to it, and I'm hoping that it has this sort of cosmic big feel to it,
Yeah.
that big scale that Byrne, I think, excelled at.
Yeah.
Those are
The
the areas.
trailers hint at that, but we'll have to
They
wait and
do.
see.
We'll wait and see.
And I am
So
Mr. Negative, so
you
we'll see
are
how I
Mr.
feel
Nate.
about
We'll
it.
see. You're hard to please. But just have high standards. That's all. That's all. It's fine.
That's right.
So I'll end with the final question. Unless there's anything else that I'm missing that you want to touch
No,
on.
no, no, no. That's
I
great.
will then shift to the merch question. Did you have any Fantastic Four merch back in the day? And
No.
is there any that you would like to have had?
I would love a mask of Doctor Doom that flies around the room and terrifies
Well,
people.
I think there's a theme because a lot of the things you want are things that fly around the room. I think
And
you want to fly in crypto. There was something else you
yeah.
wanted that flew. I can't remember what it was
Oh,
now.
I can't remember. Maybe it was a flying Mothra.
I think it might have been.
Yeah.
And see, I do have, and I still have. I had some pin back buttons of Johnny, She-Hulk in the Fantastic Four costume, and
Oh, nice.
Doom, all John Byrne art. I don't know why I don't have the complete FF. That's what was available. That's what I bought, I guess. And then I think if I wanted, what would I like to have? I wouldn't mind to keep a theme from the Superman episode that we did. I would like a lapel pin, an enamel lapel pin, either of the FF logo or of Doctor
Yeah.
Doom's mask. Those would be good.
Yeah. You know what actually wouldn't be bad was the Byrne era uh Fantastic Four costumes, not the full costume, but like just a
Mhm.
shirt, like the
Mhm.
dark blue with the white
Yes,
details. That
I
would be
I
actually kind of nice.
I did prefer when their costumes changed. I liked Burns' version better than the original.
Yeah, me too.
I
Me
liked
too.
that. Anyway, well, I think that wraps it up for this episode of Ancient Geeks. We look forward to hearing from you. If you have anything to say to us, we'd love to hear it, and we'll see you next week.
See you next time. It looks like clobbering time is over, ending another episode of Ancient Geeks. Thanks for listening. You can find us on the podcast platform or app of your choice, where we'd be grateful if you'd subscribe and even better, leave a review. If you have words for us, kind or otherwise, contact us directly at someancientgeeks@gmail.com. Look for us on Reddit, Facebook, Blue Sky, and other social media outlets. All content copyright 2025, Tom Grant and Stephen Taylor. Music by Reversed Image, whom you can find on Pixabay. See you next time.
I don't believe my baby blues.